Just because you think somebody is going to be a good manager or a leader or a good trainer, whatever it is, does not necessarily mean that they are a good fit for that role. I have learned the hard way. I have continuously made the mistake. And the reason why I want to share this with everybody here is because I am not perfect. A lot of us business owners, we go through trials, we go through, situations, and we pay our fair share of stupid tax, like I always say. And this is kind of one of those situations. And it's not a horrible situation by any means, but it's gotten to a place where you see the misalignment. And I think that's huge. So, welcome to the Legacy Builders podcast, where we're redefining generational wealth one story at a time. I'm your host, Mario Gonzalez, and let's get into it. So, I have been running my dog training business for, I'd say, a year and a half out of the current building that I'm at. And had this gal walk in one day and requested an interview. She had the skill set. She had worked with dogs before, and I liked what I heard, right? And so over time, I could just see that she was an exceptional trainer, and she really had those skills dialed in. But I saw something in her, and like any good leader, you want to coach and develop folks. So I spent a lot of time, working with her and kind of refining those skills. And at some point, I did want to step out and not have to talk to and communicate with clients. And so I got her up trained as quickly as I could to return dogs back to their owners. And it took her a while to warm up because I noticed that she didn't really have the people skills that I was looking for. For example, when you're talking to somebody, you look at them in the eyes, right? I noticed that there was a lot of glancing off in the distance. So the eye communication piece was huge. And then also when you're talking to somebody, like sometimes even if you don't want to be in that room or have that interaction, you have to put the face on. You have to put the mask on. It's sales 101. The voice would be very low as well. And just, she didn't have that natural charisma, so to speak, and still really doesn't till this day. Sometimes I see it flipped on a little more than others. Nevertheless, people skills is something we've been working big time on. So we got that dialed in to a certain extent. And then I just noticed that the work ethic was there. Like she would show up, she would come in, we didn't ask her to, she would pick up the slack. She would call, make sure that no stone was unturned and make sure that customers are being reached out to and all those things. And so for me, I'm like, hey, at some point I'm going to need a general manager, somebody to run this place when I officially step out. So I've started talking to her about, being a potential general manager, and she was open to the idea. I myself was in a learning phase in how to develop and coach people and write people up and, be very meticulous with my employee handbook. And so it was kind of a learning experience for the both of us. And so I put together this role for her, and we have clear outlines. And I set the expectation that this role is going to evolve. Sure as hell, I put her on a salary program instead of hourly, with the intent, and I don't know if anybody knows how salary works, but basically, instead of you paying your customer an hourly wage, so they show up and they get paid $17 an hour, you kind of come up with how much you're going to pay them annually, and then you divide that by 52 weeks or whatever your pay cycle is, right? So they get paid the same no matter how many hours they work, how much time they take off. So she could take a full week off and she's still getting paid her base salary, right? And so there was commissions on top of that and so forth. And I just started noticing some cracks. I started noticing that how the way that she used to be with, showing up and coming in when she didn't have to. And some of those things, like it's almost seems as soon as I flipped over to salary, that stopped happening. And I'm like, why? I addressed it with her several times, and I figured there's probably some burnout, which, thankfully she had been honest with me and told me that there was burnout. And I'm always kind of gauging where an employee is at. So that was one of them, is I just noticed that the effort wasn't really there like it used to be. Because I think when an employee is on salary, they get into this mind state like, oh, I can work the bare minimum or I don't have to work a full week and then I still get paid the same, right? Another red flag that I noticed was there's been ups and downs. There's seasonality with any business. And with this particular business, a lot of the times when I have under 10 dogs, it doesn't make any sense to have more than 2 trainers. And for that reason, she is supposed to be the anchor. So if I have 2 trainers on staff and I only need 1 trainer, it makes logical sense for me to send that other trainer home and keep her working for that day, because she gets paid salary no matter what, right? Why am I going to double dip? And I'm also mindful about folks have bills to pay and all that, but I heard from somewhere, maybe it was a business coach, that, we're a business, not a charity. So I kind of take that with a grain of salt. But that said, there would be times where she would not come to work so that way the other employee could get hours. And I'm like, hey, that makes no sense because I'm still paying you even though you're not at the facility training and doing the work. So now I also have to pay the other employee. So that was kind of the other one. There's been other times where I have conversations and I notice that she's been kind of dismissive with something she doesn't agree with, right? There's no like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it again, or I'll fix it. The times that I know that we're on the same page, I hear that. But recently, that hasn't really been the case, and I almost feel like I'm getting to the final straw. And it just hit me the other day that I have this pattern where I see some good in somebody or I see potential, and then I automatically give them a role and not let them prove themselves. And then I'm kind of stuck with that person, right? But this final straw happened a couple days ago, and one of the trainers put in their 2 weeks notice, and which was really a 9-day. And I find out from another employee, and we're kind of getting into gossip territory, but find out from another employee that she knew a week ago that this employee was leaving, which threw me off guard because it is literally in the job title, the job description, right? You're responsible for operations, you're responsible for scheduling and conflicts and those types of things. And I asked her about it. I'm like, hey, I heard that you found out a week ago. What's your justification for not giving me a heads up sooner? And I gave her room to speak. And she said that, well, I didn't feel like it was my place. It should have come from him. And I let her air it out. And I was like, hey, it is literally in your job title. Like, we should have known. If you wanted to keep loyalty, if you were just another employee, like a peer to peer, completely understand, not your place. But as a functioning general manager with your responsibilities, you could have at least flagged it up and said something along the lines of, hey, we should start trying to search for a new trainer. I should have seen some sort of indication from you that you were getting the backup employee trained to cover the gaps in the schedule that were coming up because you're scheduling time off. Instead, we have 9 days to try and figure out how we're going to fill in the gaps, right? And I'm going to have to work in the business for a few days, which it's my business. I don't mind. At the same time, that's not what I brought her on and how I built the systems. And so I get frustrated with myself when I ignore yellow flags. And I've talked about this before, but sometimes you have a spot to fill and you hire the first person that walks through the door, right? For me, I think it's when I see that I've built some sort of relationship or this person has potential, I automatically plug them in and assume that they're going to excel and I can teach them the rest along the way. I can't sit here and tell you that I have an answer of how to spot those red flags. I think a lot of it comes from experience. I think that during an interview process, you can cover a lot of things that you can find out about a person and their core values and what they think by just watching them. Maybe that's partly my fault as I haven't been there as much as I should be. I have tried to work and make corrections and, coach to the best of my ability. But at the end of the day, you can't change somebody. Either they align with your core values or they don't. You have some employees that will take constructive feedback and just run with it and change things and do things the way that you ask them to do. And then you have other employees that they only see things their way, and it's not necessarily that they're being defiant, but it almost feels that way. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, I just wanted to share that experience. It has been a little irritating and disappointing. I don't like spending a lot of time, even money, right? Like you can always get money back, but when it's a slow season like it is now, every penny counts. And when you have an employee who feels bad for other employees and is basically giving away hours and, scheduling folks when there's no justification to give away the hours because there's literally not enough work, it is a huge problem, on top of other problems. So just wanted to share that story. Figure out the red flags. I'd highly recommend, at least from my experience, that you don't automatically promote somebody unless you know 110% they're the right fit for the role. I would recommend maybe doing a trial. So in my case, what I should have done is said, hey, we're going to trial this for 6 months to see how you do in the role. If we don't feel like you're a good fit, then we'll kind of take that away. Maybe not give them the title right away. Let's say if, after 6 months, if they graduate and they prove that they're capable and you can see that the values are aligned and they can handle the situations, then maybe at that point we give the full promotion. Moving forward, that's what I'm going to do. There was also other things on the back end that made it a little difficult because there's folks that weren't ready at that time and they're fully capable to make better decisions and fill in gaps. Nevertheless, it's always a learning experience and a learning curve. So until the next time, I hope everything goes well with all of my listeners. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next one.